guys hear me? Any on that? Okay. Right. So it's very difficult to tell a story or speak something when no acknowledgement comes from other side. So it's a very odd experience for the first time. But let's start. So what we'll do today is that we'll talk about a little bit of so it's called IT service delivery. So there's many nuances to what it means. So what we'll do is because it's a foundational element, we'll try to talk a little bit about what it means from the various service delivery point of view, the various services a typical IT firm or IT organization could deliver. So given that we have about 45 minutes, we'll touch upon key aspects. I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with many of these things. So what we'll do is I'm not going to speak too much about the topic in general, but it's more of I will try to share the experiences so that you will see what is a real world scenario. So typically slides are slides. They can be as static as textual as non-emotional as possible. But I think when I start sharing what they mean in your real life, in an organizational life, you will probably get a better experience view of what it means. So what we'll do is, this is the agenda. So I hope you are able to see what is the agenda. So the agenda is about what is really IT service delivery, right? So you will see three different connotations to that. But before that, let's understand what an IT service firm goes through, what it's supposed to do. Then what we'll see is we'll see the typical tools and technologies. I think what I do is I'll not spend a lot in terms of explaining what is the tools and technologies, but broadly, what are these kind of tools? I'm sure you know there are innumerable tools in the space. So the core is to get an essence of what these are trying to do within the delivery process, and then therefore how do we learn? So by the time you reach into your jobs and then you start working, you don't look or you don't blink when people tell you that these are the tools that are there. So there is broad array of tools, especially if you are joining a product company, you join some kind of a services company, or you're joining an enterprise company. Each of them will have variations, various tools, internally developed, bought. So it is just that, until you reach there, you will not know exactly what you need to master. So there is no need of mastering now. So, but being aware that there are such tools and they mean something in your career and in your work life is what you need to be very familiar with. And then a little bit of what they do. For example, if I say project management tool or a Scrum Master tool, what they do is something that if you know, that is good enough. If you practice, great. Typically, if you do a little bit of practice on any tool, any open source tool, any professional or any licensed tool, if you practice on one, you get the nuance of what it means. And once you get that, I think you are much more comfortable understanding and explaining it. So it's like listening and practice, right? So you listen, you learn, then you practice it by learning, then you will have much better ability to converse and explain in your interviews. So third aspect is service models. Primarily, the reason I'm trying to introduce the service models is you will work in projects, you will work in various engagements. So each engagement has got its own nuances in terms of how and what is expected from the customer. See, at the end of the day, every customer will expect you to deliver software, deliver a working, high quality software. So, but there are nuances in which you need to seek this information. For example, if there is no clarity about the product or no clarity about what you are supposed to do, but you are supposed to do it in one day, there's no way you can complete it. So that kind of nuances are also applicable in software delivery. And then based on such nuances, we need to organize or we need to accept certain kind of service models only, and that is what we'll try to learn. So again, like I said, the focus is not to tell you a gamut and array of such models, but to introduce you to the concept on which these models are built. And then if you understand the concepts and nuances, you are able to make those differentiated decisions while you are in the work, right? So again, the recent growth models, I am sure most of you will know. So you can let me know if you had some issues or if you are very familiar. So I'll talk about only those things which are a little unfamiliar to you. So that's what we'll try to do. So I hope you guys can text if there is any specific question, and I can address that particular question when I speak. Growth potential. We are talking about IT here. I don't think I should talk about it. So IT is such a growth potential. That's such a growth industry. You will see things die and then things reborn here. So you should not have any doubt about the potential of IT. It is getting embedded into almost everything that we do today. So we are getting into this smart world order. That means everywhere there should be smartness, and everywhere that means there will be data, and everywhere there should be some software that will make sense out of that data. So future is about the smart products, the smart thinking, and the smart tools that you will see, and therefore potential is great. The question is, are you ready? Are you learning? Are you going to learn, and are you going to be continuous learner in future? Will determine whether you have opportunities or not. So we'll talk about that. I specifically talk about what are the current hot opportunities, where are the placement opportunities, and then what is the ones I call them as the dying roles in the organization. I'll talk about that. That is to specifically emphasize to you that if you don't learn while in job, that means IT job is about continuous learning job. So till you reach your retirement, and maybe post retirement if you want to be a consultant, you continue to learn, continue to develop and understand new stuff to deliver business value to the customer. So these are things that we will try to talk. What is service delivery? So essentially, it is about what is that I need to build, right? So either it is a customer who requests you, or in most cases you have understood the customer and then you felt that you could create a product for them, or you are saying I am going to build something specific to a specific customer, which is primarily the way you engage for a customer projects. So you might be doing specific to a customer, which is what we call as a custom end development or custom delivery, or you are developing a product which probably is called as a mass delivery. So that means when I say mass delivery, it means mass delivery. You are really making a product. So the connotation of product is changing. So today, if you see the product is becoming something like product is something like a few years back, the product was like you deploy the product for one customer and then manage him. But now you see that with cloud, with all these things, you see what is called as a SaaS, a common product for many people to use. And the way you separate each user into tenant and then their data into separate aspects that they can only see is a killer engineering skill that people need to have today. So if you are looking at an engineering skill, and if you are looking at specific capability in becoming an engineer, developer, try to start looking at what is the difference between a SaaS way of doing things and what is the difference between an application way of doing things. Develop some sense of how SaaS data models are done, how the APIs or engineering aspects of how you deliver the engineering and APIs within the context of that customer, and then capturing the data that is in the context of that customer has to be developed. If you develop that sense, I think you have a very good chance of attending these kind of interviews and then making yourself a little bit more differentiated in the panel that are going to interview you. So what to build is one part, right? So what to build is also how the organizations have to specialize themselves. In the sense, some organizations will say that I specialize in almost everything that the world has, Some organizations will say, I don't have that capacity. I will build and then I'll become specific, strong in specific areas. Some people will become what I call as boutique companies. So they are only specialist in one area and then they do good job in that one area only. So so I'm trying to use this single slide to explain how companies themselves plan their services in the market, right? So what to build or what to offer as a service is the key differentiator or key elements that every organization or every service organization has to look at. Now go to the product side. The product organization, what do? They also have to decide what software they will build and which market they want to go, and then they want to offer their services. So what to build is one of the key things. But if you look at from a software delivery operations point of view, the understanding of what to build is important. So if you're saying I want to build a CRM software, if you say that I want to build a mobile software, if you want to build something, the understanding and the nuances of that customer, who is that customer who is going to use it and why they will use it, what is the purpose they are trying to fulfill with that particular tool or that particular software is very important for software operation. See, we normally see this set of the so-called coders. I will talk about the coders later again. So if your interest is that I just have to write a Java code, if your focus is that I have to just write a requirement that is asked by my requirements guy or my BA or my project manager, or my customer, then you have a problem in the sense your requirement has nuances in itself, right? So if you say my requirement is something, and if you don't understand that context, example is the meaning of certain words in various domains will change. So the customer I'm just giving a broad level explanation because it becomes easier for you. The customer in a retail scenario is someone who is coming to your store, or somebody who is purchasing online the products that you are in display. The hospitals don't call them as customers, they call it as patients, right? So it's a very simple nuance, you all know, that's why I'm trying to tell you. But the way these two people behave is completely different. The one person is trying to look for things for himself, and the other person requires huge amount of consulting and services. So the operations that need to work in each of these places is completely different. The information you need to collect is completely different, and then based on the information, how you react is completely different. So if you understand that I need to do registration, simple word called registration. A patient registration is completely different from a customer registration. This registration again has got certain kind of regulatory elements. For example, in a customer registration, you cannot save the information about the credit cards and then personal information. In a patient, you cannot reveal a lot more things, because why is a patient, what is the reasons, what are the symptoms, all those things you cannot reveal to everybody except for his doctor or the person who he allows to see. So therefore, when you document or when you write requirements, and when you are trying to code these requirements or when you develop these requirements, your ability to understand the domain and therefore what is right and what is not right in terms of developing is very important. And if you do that, you are able you become star in the organization. You become a very good developer. You become very good engineer in the organization. If you develop only, Hare Baba, you asked me to write a registration. I just wrote a registration. It is saving the data. So if you develop at that level, you're still okay, but you are considered to be an average guy. And then if you can't write out also, then I don't think you deserve to be in the software. That's how people see you, right? So important that you start developing this sense of why and for whom and for who is what purpose that you're writing software. Now that we'll go into a little bit of how do we build it and how do we deliver it, and that is something that we'll talk in the next slide. So any questions, guys, till now? I don't see much of any questions on chats. It's okay. So what is this? What is that we are trying to do here, right? So you're seeing that there is a development process, designing, scope, stabilization. So typical software development process is that, whether it is product development or process development or a platform development or an application development, you more or less go through similar cycles where you define what is the scope of the current set of projects or current set of scrums, current set of sprints. So whatever name you give, there is certain thing that you need to engineer, and then you need to know what you're going to engineer for that period, and then you engineer it. Then you have to make sure that whatever you engineer is stabilized. But mind you, what you're seeing right now will change in future. We no longer think, at least I personally don't think that going forward, this stabilization phase is something that will be an explicit phase. The expectation is that tomorrow's engineers will be given so many tools that they are expected to deliver a stabilized work, stabilized code while it is being developed. In a sense, you are stabilizing your code while you're developing the code which is stable, and that will become. And if you see the trends of that is happening already. You see DevOps. DevOps is about this ability to put the code that you developed today into operation as quickly as possible, and then that cycle will keep shortening as you go. And then there's also something that you'll keep hearing, something called AI ops, which basically means whatever you wrote, whatever code you wrote, if it is not going to settle or it's not going to stabilize anything, the AI ops will catch it and then tell you that, hey boss, you have written bad code, please correct it right away. So you are going to that kind of a scenarios, and that kind of scenarios means that the stabilization will have to happen while development is happening. And that basically means that this cycle will shorten in future. Now, second thing is delivering the product to the customer. Now, question is, what is product, right? So in today's world, especially in the SaaS world, a product is a feature. Even if you develop a small feature saying that now I will capture customer's phone number, that itself is a product. So are you delivering like your newspaper? Newspaper guys call themselves as product every day. They deliver a product every day. I think software guys are moving to a direction where they're saying they are developing a product every day. So that is what the meaning of product is. So are you ready? Are you going to bring in that kind of heavy skills, specialization, and the kind of quality that you need to deliver there? So that's something that you need to understand. So that is a nuance of future job. Everybody has to think that is delivering product every day, and that is I'm sure you guys know what is called agile. So the agile is about that, right? It's agility that can give organization that differentiation. So if I'm going to deliver feature every day, I'm going to become faster in the market. That means more people will come to me from market. And then they think that these guys are delivering something new every day, so that I should associate myself to them. So the prestige of the organization is dependent on in the way you deliver your product. One of the reasons why Amazon is such a big company, that is such a big organization, is because they were able to focus, and then they've developed the engineering process so nuancedly that today they're able to deliver feature by feature into the market. You hear Netflix. Netflix is known as super engineering company because of their ability, but Netflix is primarily a video company, but they've become high class quality engineering company. So this tells you two things. One thing, I think recently you might have seen Satya Nadella's quote as well, that every organization, any organization in the world is now software and data company primarily, because your products and most of your services are being delivered through product, the software. The customer is experiencing this industry, this project, this product through software or data. Why? Because you are going to fix IoTs to that. You are going to then control those machines through IoT and then IoT sensor-based software instructions. That means every product, every company is now making software as a mainstream to their product and their own survival. So you will see that, therefore, the change in the way the software processes will work in future means that this will shrink again. So is this clear to you guys? Of course, maintenance and support is like you are 24/7. Most of the products will work 24/7. The ability to make sure that each product works to the customer on a 24/7 basis becomes quite a big significant norm, and then you will start seeing that kind of a change in future. Okay, let me go through this. What is the product management? So essentially, I told you that there is something called product management. You convert this into what I call as a project, or let's say the customer engagement management as well. But essentially, you are looking at products, you are developing the products. There is a certain systematic way that people develop this. So how you organize? You organize by saying that I observe my customers, and my customers give me a lot of inputs in terms of that area, and then I develop for them one nuanced way of doing things. Other way is, I understand the industry, I have looked at the industry, I think the industry requires significant change, and I have a better model for that, and I develop a product which will disrupt that industry. So you will see that a lot of the startup companies are looking at some of these processes. Of course, you need domain experience, but sometimes you can be without domain experience and you can bring a fresh perspective. Like people like you can see some industry and feel that, why are these guys doing like this, right? So these guys are doing like dinosaur kind of processes. And if they are doing dinosaur age processes, I have a better understanding, I bring better perception. Can I develop a product which will disrupt the entire way of doing things? So if you see, Netflix was a video company, it became a software company, and it it was like third or fourth in the market. It became suddenly number one company because it followed a new disruptive model of delivering videos. So you see the same thing. You see Swiggy's of the world. You see the Dunzos of the world, right? So Swiggy started saying that I'll only deliver food. Then they said I'll deliver grocery. Now Dunzo says I'll deliver everything. How does it matter? I can pick up and then deliver. That is my core competency, and I'll deliver everything. So the question is, can you see the market? Can you see what you are seeing? And then can you say that this is a problem in this area? And I can bring a fresh perspective. And I can actually change the way things are being done. And you become a startup. And then if you become startup and you really are able to solve that problem, and then you become a unicorn and a billion-dollar company. So that is how the power of software is there. So you have opportunity, and that opportunity is based on how seriously you see that a problem and how you think you're solving that in a disruptive way. You win the game. So that's why I brought this. So important is that you need to understand how people use, how people are doing things, and then see what is the areas that are big problem areas, and then based on that, can you make difference there? So software delivery aspect is also about this ability to understand. And I'm going to give you a little bit insight saying that more and more software service companies, I'm talking about software service companies, are becoming what we call as a platform engineering companies, which basically means more and more these companies have to understand the customer better than customer himself in some areas, and go and tell the customer that, hey, you are doing this, but you are doing this out of your habits and past practice. I will help you to clean this up, make you become digital, and therefore become faster in your organization and in your industry, and therefore make you better in your industry. So if you're able to communicate that, if you're able to understand them that better, and then if you're able to communicate them that better, I think you will win the game. So that is the nuance that is happening in the service, even in the service market. So if you are a guy, if you are a person, you are fresh, you can start thinking from now as to what is this challenges the companies are facing, what are the processes that they are seeing, and how do I change that processes. If you're able to start thinking in that direction, you have a fantastic future in the future world. You have fantastic opportunities in the future world. So start thinking in that lines if you are aligned with this kind of thinking. The next one is the development cycle itself. So yeah, see, this is most useless topic if I talk and then bore you, but I don't want to bore you. So what I'll do is I'll just tell you that you know this most of the things. So what is that is important for you to know about what is happening in the market, right? So I told you that it is shrinking. The software development cycle is shrinking, and you know that it is shrinking from the last like 60, 70 years from the time Barry Boemer started researching about this. You know that things are being changed. Project management is changing. Requirement management is changing. Design and architecture models are changing. Testing models are changing. Support model is changing. Everything is changing. Everything is changing for better and faster, right? So by the time you come into the market, and by the time I guess you guys are in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th semesters. So maybe the 7th and 8th semesters will not see big change, but they'll see definite change from today. And then the 3rd, 5th, and 6th semester guys, when they come in, they'll see big changes, because that's how the market is changing. A lot of disruption is happening in software development. If you see today, there are this waterfall model is considered to be dinosaur, so you don't even talk about that. But there are iterative development models. So in the iterative development models, people are developing new ways of develop. Using that agile concept, using the lean concept, using the Kanban concept. All these concepts like Kanban, agile, and lean have not come from software alone. They have come from outside software, like manufacturing area. They looked at how Japanese did better job. They looked at how the consulting professionals, the product consulting professionals have looked at things, and then they applied those things. So essentially what you do is I would request you, once this is done, just develop some sense of what tools are there in each of these areas. So you have planning tools like, Asana, Slack, Trello, Microsoft projects. So there's so many things. But I think it is cool if you develop some sense of what these products are. Like you can take Asana and then do it. You can take Slack and do it. You can take Jira and do it. But get there and then understand one product at least. So if you can do as a suggestion, analysis tools are there. Analysis tools like Jira could be an analysis tool. You can have some case tools. You can have some of this. I've given some more Scrum tools here. You will, and obviously I'll share the slides with you. But there are analysis tools which again Jira, or let's say Microsoft. Now they call it as Azure DevOps. You can look at that. Then you have design tools. You have implementation tools. which is about how do you deploy things faster. So some amount of deployment parts, some amount of your coding, some amount of your GitHub, all those things are there. If you go there, you can see that there are a lot of people who are developing what they call as low code platforms, which essentially means that some of the services people can develop themselves without knowing any coding. So that means your business guys can write their code themselves and then start deploying, which actually puts pressure on you, right? That means your ability or your software has to become faster. Your ability to do is a complex software is what you can do. You cannot do this kind of small stuff that the business can do. And my view is these low code platforms will become very popular. For simple stuff, people will no longer come to software developers. They are expected to do big bang things. That's what is the expectation. So implementation tools like that, testing and integration tools. So when I talk about testing, I'll talk a little bit later, but testing and integration are becoming what we call as the DevOps capability. Maintenance is becoming more like what we call as cloud ops, product operations, data operations kind of areas. So these are all things that you will hear in the market. So while the names remain the same, the way you look cool, or you look more relevant if you talk the language of these ops, cloud ops, test ops, data ops, and then you understand what they mean in the context of keeping the product live. So let me move to the next one, which is primarily you are very familiar with these models, right? The SDLC models. What I did is I try to bring some changes or some new things that are there. I am sure you are very familiar with all these models. But what we are seeing is increasingly the companies are going towards what we call as the agile or lean set of tools, right? So why? I told you that because things are shrinking. The market is talking about shrinking how you deliver. So can I deliver a product every day? Is the norm on which people are working. So can I deliver, when I said, can I deliver a product every day? Can I move from what is this development mode to can I just do configuration and deliver my product? So that's another configure and then deliver the product is another way that people are talking about. So each of these things, right, the way, therefore, they have been developed to solve a certain problem. The reason why this has evolved, you all know, because we were writing code which was not meeting customer. So the customer could not see that for long. And therefore, we wanted to make sure that customer or the user of our product can see the requirements or can see what we are delivering very quickly and then give us feedback. Over time, it has evolved into what is called as the customer himself will be part of our engineering team and it keeps you direction in every day. We call them as product owners. So this system has become like co-development model. It is no longer I develop, you see. It to co-development, you tell me in daily basis, you give me feedback daily basis and I will do it. So if you look at that way, the idea is that lean means nothing but how do I eliminate wastage? How do I eliminate unnecessary processes? So lean is continuously putting its lens in all processes, all engineering processes that we are seeing and identifies if something that we are doing is wrong. Something that we are doing is wastage. So it is crashing that. So every wastage process, it is crashing. Because of that crashing of wastage processes, what will happen is this agile and Scrum Kanban becomes much more efficient as you go. So what is the difference? Each of these things are different by how much I will deliver. Most of these things are more or less norms. Come to a conclusion that it should be 2 to 3 weeks for them to deliver anything. But I think increasingly you'll see that you will start moving towards the direction of 1 week or less than that at some stage in future. The second set of things is, how do I take the feature? So somebody says that the feature development, you develop feature by feature. Somebody says you group the features and develop and then test them separately. So that is the second set of things that people do. The third set of things is you continuously evolve the architecture. You don't architect upfront. You continuously evolve architecture. Then another element which is about people, right? How many people will be a part of a group? Will be a part of a Scrum team. So typical thing is, a lot of people talk about 2 pizza team, 1 pizza team and all. It essentially means that how many fit into a single group. But there is a need in the enterprise world. There is a need that there should be large groups, large teams need to form. So people have created what they call a safe agile model, which is essentially about how do you do agile with large teams. So, but if you look at within the large teams, do you do pair-based development? Or do you develop based on only 6 people group can be formed and then they can talk between themselves to create that feature and then design that feature, develop the feature and then show it to other people. So Crystal is like that. So then in terms of workflow itself, can you create everything into visual form? Can you show that how the flow is happening, the workflow? That means I develop feature. Can it move from today I develop to tomorrow you test, day after tomorrow you put it into operations. Then you create that visual model that is called Kanban. So all those things are being developed to make things most faster. Now it comes to the concept of DevOps. So DevOps essentially is about uh, agile and lean programs are looking at how do I develop faster, right? DevOps is about how do I take it to the market faster. So I take whatever you developed, I have tools, I have automated everything, it will test your product, it will test all things that you're doing, then I'll push this into production and operation. So how do I do it? Because I'm automating everything, every feature I'm developing, I will put a pipeline, which is called DevOps pipeline. DevOps pipeline essentially means there are certain tasks that you have automated upfront, and then the moment feature is developed, the system will pick that feature and then starts building it, starts testing it, start unit testing it, starts packaging it, starts deploying it. After it's deployed and somebody tests, there you go. My view is that testing as a older way of testing, manual testing is going to go, it's going to die. So people who are looking at testing careers don't get into that. Focus on getting into automation testing if you can. And within the automation testing, there are new ways of like a lot of new things being developed: microservices, micro frontends, micro what do you call services, APIs. You might want to look at these areas and then see how you can develop your testing skills and automation testing skills at that in these areas. So I think I gave you a little bit. So this gives you a lot of tools to this. So all I suggest is take one tool, one flow, and then understand what that flow is. One more insight I want to give is the DevOps engineers could be there for some time, but I don't think it's a permanent skill for you. It's a skill that will be absorbed by the developers in future because increasingly a lot more tools will come. The expectation is that DevOps will become a kind of standardized processes for most systems. And once they become standardized system, it will become more of administration job rather than any kind of coding job. So people who are in DevOps, people who want to be DevOps engineers, remember that you better be a full stack engineer with DevOps skills rather than just be DevOps skills. If you're looking at DevOps skills, you're talking about 5 to 10 years career. So let's go to the next thing. So this is the delivery part, which is once the product is in operations, right? Once it gets into the production environment. So you develop something, you find what is to be developed. You develop something. Once it is developed, you know that it needs to be taken into operations and production. So you have put a DevOps process. But once it is there, how do you then look at how customers are using, what they are using, why are they using, how much are they using, how much of load is happening? If this load is happening, how do I scale it up? What kind of data, how are they, how do I understand the customer behavior? There, all those things need to be captured. While you code it, you make sure that you code it and you put it there. Someone needs to ensure that this whole system is operating very well. And there is a very systematic way of making that happen. Because I think any production system down means significant business opportunity lost. So companies are very clear that they need to make sure this is 24/7 operations. And to make sure that happens, everything is very, very controlled process. But since DevOps has come, the controlled process is changing in the sense, when I say controlled process. Okay, so some question is there, we'll discuss that. What would you do generically when a signed project is running over budget? I don't know what is generically means, but we'll discuss that. So the whole thing is that in the operation stage, we'll have to handle the operations, and then since DevOps is coming, a lot of these things are becoming automated, and I can guarantee you that AI-driven operations will transform this whole thing, and then you'll find that these guys, from being just monitoring manual monitors to simple script developers, they have to become what I call as the AI. So that means in a way it is also becoming engineering. So pure play monitoring, pure play system administration jobs are going to die. But what will happen is network administration, smart network administration, those kind of jobs will go in. So I'm trying to answer your question. So this is someone asked me, what would you do generically when an assigned a project is running over budget? See, first thing is the scope of the budget means an estimation, right? So you have estimated something. The budget or your estimation can go wrong. Your estimation itself can go wrong. So if you say that my estimation has gone wrong for these 10 reasons, and you are able to convince people saying that when I started, this technology was not known to me. When I started, this many features were not known to me, and it is being discovered. So therefore, we are going over budget. You justify, right? So your budget, your overrun, if you are able to justify, you are more or less okay. If you are unable to justify, that means you are saying, I am overrunning because I have problems with my team members, I have problems with my skill sets, I have problems with uh, my ability to manage the project in time, because I've written a very buggy code. So if those are the reasons, the cost of that typically falls on the team that is developing and the company that is developing. For example, for a service company, if the problem is that of the service company, you get it. The service company has to bear the cost. So there are penalty implications in the sense, if the budget is justified, the overrun is justified, you live with it. The customer pays for it. If the overrun is not justifiable, then it is for others. Now coming to the manage, this is about penalty part. Coming to the management part, right? So if you say I'm overrunning, so the reason why you are overrunning is you probably have understood the scope wrongly, or you probably have understood the way you need to estimate wrongly. So what you can do is you can actually, there is something called a triumvirate of axis, right? You look at quality, scope, and time. So the problem that you are facing is you cannot definitely undermine the quality. A lot of times what we do is, because of under pressure, people stop doing the right things and then produce bad quality. So you are only accentuating your scenario by saying that I produce a bad quality. That means it will be tested and it will be captured at some stage. So the product will never go faster. So don't compromise quality in any case, in any kind of pressure project, any kind of budget scenario project. Don't compromise quality, because it will come and bite you at some stage. It will always overrun. So that is the learning that you should keep. Don't compromise quality. Second thing is the only two things that you have, which is scope and time. So what you should do is, see, at the end of the day, customer is looking for what I call as, I need to go to the market and I need to start making money. I need to make something happen in my marketplace to my customer. So what can you do given where you are? If you look at the product, and if you look at, let's say you have developed 100 features, there are another 20 features or another 100 features to be developed. Now what you can say is, what is the minimum viable from now? If I develop 10 more features, if I develop 15 more features, will I make some viability for it? Will it be useful to the user, so that at least you start making some money out of the process, or you're starting making some impact on the customer? If you're able to negotiate that part, which is what is the next set of features that I can develop, so that at least something is there in the market. See, nobody can see, your customer will shout at you, your managers can shout at you because you're already delayed, but that's okay, because at the end of the day, that's the reality. The reality is that we got delayed. You accept it. Now from here, how do I get the customer happy? That way is to look at the scope, what you can deliver faster. This time, based on your learning, can you estimate better? If you can't still estimate, then you are in trouble. You are bigger trouble. That you have to confess that to the customer, saying that I don't think I can estimate this. So can I do something like a much more faster agile, so that people can understand this quickly and then uh, uh, see that we can estimate things better. So first problem that you're solving is, then can I first of all look at what features I delivered so that it can go to market. Second step is, since I'm still struggling with estimation, can I see some kind of a POC model, or can I do a quick rapid development model of checking what are the things that need to be done, and based on that, can I estimate what needs to be done, and therefore give a better accuracy to the customer. So if you handle these two things, you are in a much better shape to address the customer's problem. Did I answer your question? Based on what criteria the final year student should select his projects with helping in future scopes? Okay, so I don't know what do you mean by criteria, right? So if you like something, I'm going to show you what are the skills that are going to be very, very hot skills. You look at it, I'll try to answer. If you don't get your answer, I'll try to answer this. So is it okay if I wait? I let you wait for a couple of more minutes. So let me go to the next slide. So this is catalog, right? So this catalog is about what is that I'll offer and how will that I offer. So I'll not spend too much time. It's essentially saying that future of the market, or future will be that a lot of small features, a lot more small things need to be developed for a customer. and you ensure that customer knows what they are, and then they'll come and select. Can you give me this, this, this? And then you have to give like a menu, and then that menu will be processed, and then you will do projects for them. So then let's go to this model, which is basically the different kinds of software. So what is the nuances here, right? So pricing model is primarily how do you price your projects? You can either price as a fixed price, or you can do a time and material. When you fixed price, the customer knows what he needs to pay. Time and material, customer will have budget. He thinks that he can achieve something by using a team of people. When do you use time and material? When you have no clue, you are very high level understanding about it, but you roughly say it will take 2 million to produce that. So someone who asked, this is a case where the budget becomes important. But typically what happens is when nobody knows, the whole organization, nobody in the world knows that what it will cost. You are only trying to put the finger in the air and then saying that by some methodology you will identify. You will be wrong. So you might be wrong. So people appreciate that because you have been upfront, vocal and upfront. You are able to tell people that I don't know, but I will go and attempt to this, that there will be a big variation with this. People are okay with that. People what are not okay with when the technology, the project, the capabilities, everything is known. So the difference is if there is certain level of uncertainty, you should be able to highlight that uncertainty upfront. If you highlight that uncertainty and ask for budget, people will give you. If everything is known to you and then you still over the budget, then you are in trouble. You will lose job. That much is very clear. So that be very clear about that. That means you need to do a proper, serious engineering detailing and estimate. If after doing that, the budget, if you say these are the 10 uncertainties, and then you go and then say, I need to solve this uncertainties upfront to get the budget, or you say that this can be only solved while we are programming, and then I can come back to you. At least 50% over budgeting might happen. Please remember, you can say that. Fixed price project is basically the customer has some budget, or customer can give you only that budget. He is saying either you do it or you don't do it. But I need. In some cases, customers saying I can't take the risk. I am willing to give you only this much. If you are confident, you please develop it. Otherwise, go off. So in that cases, it is up to the software services companies to make sure that they understand and they have enough details to be able to give that guarantee that you can develop. If you don't get into that level of engineering, so that means estimation as a technique, it's been a bane of software industry. It is a very big struggle, but estimation has to become really, really good. So that means as a developer, you have to estimate really good of what is the task that you will develop. If a feature is given, what are the tasks and how that feature will integrate with the rest of the things. If you are able to estimate that better, the level of estimation of the project will be better. Then you are likely to succeed in fixed price. Having said that, if you are a very mature organization, if you are a very fantastic engineering organization, your best success factor is how many fixed price projects are you able to execute and then successfully complete. So that is one way of checking whether the organization is highly mature or less mature. So given these nuances, there are other models that people are talking about. So there are certain services where people say, Arre Baba, I will pay you per, your cloud has come in and said, you pay per hour, per minute, all these things. So these kind of concepts also have come into marketplace. The market is saying some of the services, you please, for example, number of incidents, number of issues that your customer, people will ask you. I'll pay for that only. I will not pay for more than that. So then you have to cap it. So you say, boss, I can only handle 100 incidents per you. If it goes beyond it, I'll charge extra. But within 100, I'll provide you service. So that kind of what we call as output-based services are being there. Then there are situations where it is outcome-based. For example, large strategic projects, customers say, you become my partner. And if you are saying that we both do this project and we do cost saving, because you told me that it's possible to cost save. If cost saving happens, I give you 10% of cost saving apart from some fees. If cost saving doesn't happen, you don't get it. So that's the story, which is called outcome-based story. It could be cost saving, it could be revenue, it could be anything that you promise. You are able to boldly tell them that this is what I can deliver to you. And if you are able to deliver, they'll give you a bonus. If you don't deliver, they don't give. So that's called outcome-based. So these are the things kind of stuff. So what you are seeing is project-based, staff-based, tactical consulting, all those kind of things are different things that will happen in market. And then it's about offshore, global shore, near shore, those kind of things, and on-site, all those kind of things are other kinds of nuances you will see in software model. The reason why you say offshore, onshore, and other things is primarily how much of the requirement is documented and how much of the requirement is still with the customer's mind and how much of that can change. if based on that, you have to qualify as to how closer you have to be with the customer. So most of the time, requirements have to be very, very implicit. That means explicitly what customer says, everybody can write. Not only you, even a 10th passer can write that. But can you understand deep? Can you ask the right questions in terms of what are their implicit? So if, like in the beginning, I said, if you do something, if you are able to connect that to what the end purpose of that customer is and end users goals is, if you are able to ask questions and you are able to document the requirements, then you are understanding implicitly. And if you understand implicitly, your ability to write better code, your ability to write better estimation, your ability to write better, to better budget is all solved. So this understanding that what is that customer is asking, how much is documented, how much is implicit. If it is highly implicit, it is better to be closer to the customer. If it's highly not implicit, it's highly rule bound and is all documented, it's okay to be a lot more done from the offshore. Again, when you are doing for the first time with the customer, it is better to be a lot more closer to the customer. But as you understand the customer, you can be far off from the customer because now you understand his language, his expectations. So that's how the way service models are being created by organizations. So how is the industry growing? I told you, I gave you this picture saying that every product, everything that is going to be there in the market will become software and data products. So you have no problem in terms of as an engineer, as a software engineer in the future. You will have some problem this year because of COVID, and then a lot of companies, industries are facing financial crisis this year. But it is not it's not a structural crisis. It is a incident crisis. That means once the incident goes, people start getting into the peak. Some industries might have impact because people's psychology will have an issue with regard to they will travel. For example, travel industry will have significant impact. People want to go to holidays, especially to places where the pandemic has been big impact. So people will not travel long for some period. So travel industry kind of industries will take a bigger hit. They will take longer to return to the normalcy. But other industries can return to normalcy. Once they return to normalcy, things will happen. So although this is my suggestion to you, although you might struggle, some of you might have problems with getting placements this year, but by the end of this year, that means by December, things will get stabilized, and then you will all start getting absorbed. So don't lose hope, and don't lose your confidence at all. If you notice, some of the companies are also retrenching people because it is difficult for companies to survive by paying so many people who are not having jobs in the organization. Organizations first have to survive, then only they can give livelihood to other people. So remember that livelihood depends on whether the organization itself survives, and the organization can survive when the economy picks up. So that is the equation that cannot change, and we have to fit into that equation, and then you have to wait for your opportunity there. That is for only this year, and then be confident that it's only incident driven. It is not a structural problem. It's not like financial crisis where 4 or 5 years will go. This is purely a incident, and an incident will go off in about 3 to 4 months. And then after that, and once a vaccine comes in about 9 to 12 months, I think the whole system will be completely normal and everything will be all right. The travel industry's dependency, people who want, and some of those industries where people have to travel far, those industries will probably take that much time, and for people to get confidence that they can travel and then they can be safe, and that would be a vaccine time. That's what our estimation is. Okay, so and I'll move to the next one. So what are the in demand jobs, right? So these, I feel, the kind of things that you are seeing. So AI architect, business intelligence analyst, cloud architect. So whatever you're seeing on the left side, right, they're all in demand. I put DevOps as engineers as a red color. So today DevOps engineers has a great demand, fantastic demand. But I think over a period of time, this will get absorbed into engineering project team, developers. Developers will develop that. So if you look at full stack developer, I have put that as a full stack developer. What is a full stack developer? A full stack developer is someone who will not say I will only write Java code. A full stack developer is not someone who will say that I will only write SQL code. He has to write right from the top feature, that means UI, UX to the database. If you are developing and you are able to develop that for a feature, then you will survive. If you can't develop that as a complete feature, then your ability to survive in the market will be minimal. So please develop this skill that you should do everything. Don't go with this view that I will not develop UI, UX, I will not develop HTML, I will not develop that, I will not develop this. Then I think the market will not accept such kind of people in no longer. I think since you are fresh, I am telling you, when you come, your mindset will be better. So when you try to adapt to the job, please try to adapt as a full stack developer rather than thinking that you are only that part of this job. A lot of your brethren who is in the industry, those guys are struggling, and those guys are going to lose jobs. And this wave, whatever we are seeing, this wave, it will punish them. It will punish them, saying that you don't have skills, you are most lowest rated for me, you are most least wanted for me as a company. Therefore, I will sack those people first. So please be remembering that if crisis comes, a full stack developer, guys who have better skills are likely to survive better in the organization than people who have this kind of limitations. So I think today market is saying if you don't have skills, more than 2 3 skills, and then you are able to develop a feature yourself, you are limited, and your limitation will cause you to lose your job. So please remember that. Which are the jobs that are dying? The jobs that are dying is purely the project. The project manager will die. I have at least predicted this in back in 2004 and 5. I've told my teams very specifically, project manager as a role will die. So it has died in the form of Scrum Master. But I'm telling you, Scrum Master will also die. It is expected that engineers will organize themselves. Engineers can manage themselves by the tools. The product manager will tell what he wants. Engineers can manage that properly by themselves. The pure coder, I told you already, pure coder is a guy who will write only code and he doesn't understand what is the context, what is the thing. He's only bothered about whether I have written a code or not. That guy will die. That role will die. Those guys will not exist. I think in interviews itself, please understand, in your interviews itself, if you say that I know only this code, people will not select you. Your attitude should be that I know 2 3 things. I can write program, I can write, and then I can deploy it. If you can show that kind of a picture, you will get selected. So therefore, in your project, please remember, in your project, make sure that you select any project which will have an ability to write from the visualization layer to a application logic layer to a database layer, and you are able to deploy this in cloud kind of technologies using some kind of a DevOps tool. If you develop your projects like that, you have a better sense of those things, how they will work, and then your ability to convince people that I am a full stack developer is much better. Second thing is, please practice them. Don't just come with theoretical understanding. It is very easy for people with kind of 10, 15 years of experience to get you very quickly. Whether you're lying or whether you're telling with the concept, whether you have deep understanding or not, is very quick for them. They don't have to waste more than 5 minutes to understand whether you're that guy or this guy. Don't underestimate the understanding or the intelligence of people who are going to interview you. So better that you do that, and then based on that, you develop some skills and abstract your skills into an ability to message that. That means I understand this, sir. I've done this. In this case, I found this kind of problems, and I solved this problem this way, and I understand these problems will happen, and I have now developed better sense of how to solve them. If you're able to tell that way, the customer or your user or your interviewer can see that you have actually put effort. You have put effort to understand them. So that's the key thing. The next one is the manual tester. Manual tester is no longer there. If you notice, this round of pandemic is stacking all the manual testers. They are losing jobs. People who have attitude to develop new code, develop code-based stuff. See, a lot of people joined testing bandwagon way back in the last decade, early part of last decade, because they didn't want to write code. Now they have a problem today because they didn't want to write code then. Now we have to write code, but they don't know how to write the code because they have developed bad habits and bad attitude towards code. It is a problem for them to survive. So don't develop such kind of bad habit. Don't develop such kind of mindset saying that I will not do this. You never know what kind of things will happen. So keep open mindset as to any role. Any role can take you to anywhere. I can give you a simple example. About 6, 7 years back, people who wanted to be on the production side, right? They were looked upon down. They were thought to be bad engineers. If you look at today, DevOps engineers are primarily them. They are getting their way. So please don't look upon any kind of a role as a bad role. Every role has got a significance. That's why it is there in the process. And you need to make a biggest value out of that. And if you can develop the sense of complete life cycle and complete vertical process, that is your front end to the database, you become very valuable to the company. And if you continue to keep learning new stuff, that can add value to your current skills and then can add value to the market. For example, customers are asking this kind of skill and you already learned it. You always get the preference by the managers. So look at it that way. System administration will die because system administration, no longer companies are keeping these systems in their companies. They are all moving to cloud. So cloud is managed by significant software operations processes, and these guys might have some jobs roles there, but how much they can do? There are so many people, and then clouds are so automated. So the number of people who can get that kind of a role will be minimal. So therefore, system administrator roles will die. Is this clear now? So did I answer your question? Somebody who asked about the project. Oh, AI architect job is very good. The other question is, what if customer requirement change later after submitting request? See, there are two philosophies, right? One is, why is customer changing? He is not out there to basically make you look stupid, right? That is not his role. His role is to make sure that he becomes good for his customer, his end customer. So customer is primarily changing for two reasons. One reason is he could say that I have understood wrongly. Now I understand better. Therefore, now I understood better. So can I get the can I change it? So the reason why we have agile analytics is that we recognize that problem, that nobody can be perfect and nobody can give full clear requirements at any stage. There will be changes. So the way agile looks at it is, if it is certain kind of changes which will make the product more visible and better product, I would like to change that. But what we are saying is, engineering by definition needs certainty. When you're doing coding, when you're doing testing, when you're doing development, you want certain certainty. So what we are saying is, for the sprint period that I'm developing, you please give certainty to only that. As long as you're giving certainty to do that, I am happy. If you want to change anything else, please change, because requirements will come in future sprints. My team will understand in future, they will do it. If you are making changes to what I am doing right now, I will not be able to change that, but I will take that as a change request from you and then develop it. If you are able to get this charter right, that means if you are able to explain this to your customer. In general, agile manifestos explain this to the customer very clearly. Every organization must be able to explain every customer or every internal customer or external customer. You should be able to explain the agile charter very clear to them, saying that, Are Baba, you can change. I am also willing to change for you, because we know that both of us are trying to invest our time to create a great product. But in case if you feel that there is something that needs to be changed, I'm happy if you change anything that I can do, I have to do in the future. I'm happy anything that I've done in the past also, because you are saying but that it will become a new feature. That is not a change. For me, that is a new feature. But if you're doing some change in the current one, I cannot change because I've already engineered it. The best way is to take that as a change into the next feature set, or change that in the next sprint. If you're able to explain this very well, I think most customers are able to understand the agile model. They are able to understand that it is being devised for their benefit. There will be some customers who will be too harsh, too difficult to handle. But if you stand your foot and then say that this is the reason why it is, I think ultimately you can escalate it. If that particular customer is not able to understand, somebody else from your organization or somebody else from their organization will understand it. They'll fix it. So don't bother about that problem. But the requirement, essentially, anybody is changing is primarily because they feel the product has to be better. If that goal, that the product will become better after the change, is fulfilled, it is good to accept that change, but it is bad to accept within the current sprint. So therefore, push it to the next sprint. That's all you can do. Is that clear? Market is demanding for Python. What is your opinions? If market is demanding Python, market is a god. Please go with it. My view is Python is a multi-level skill. So it allows you to become a data analyst, data scientist kind of roles. It also allows people to do product application development. But please understand, you don't go by what is market asking for. Go by whether you have also an interest in that. You want to be a data programmer, you want to be an application programmer, show that interest, because market needs are wavy. Today, market might say Python. 4 years later, market might say Python, too many developers are there. I don't give premium to them. I will only look at R guys. So don't go by purely market. Aligning to market is for first job. But if your interest is something like, I want to be a web developer, I want to be an AI developer, I want to be a data engineer, I want to be what do you call a platform engineer, I want to be a full stack. If your goals are that, please, if you don't have one, please prepare it. You need to prepare it based on what you are enjoying when you're doing project. The idea of project is that it will tell you what you will enjoy doing in the project. So please take your project not seriously from an academic point of view, but seriously from identifying your own interest and your own motivation point of view. What in the project dimension will interest you? If you are able to tell, and if you are able to say that I enjoy this most, your ability to learn more skills in that area will become better. But when you go to the organization interviews, the general stories that goes is, people, organizations put you into different territories. But if you show that you are very skilled in that area, why would organization put you into different area? Organization will put you in the area that you already showed significant skill. So that means if your interest is good and if you have developed skills in that area, and if you demonstrate that you have better skills in that area, most organizations prefer that you do that work only. So please take your project not from an academic point of view only. Take the project as an area where you will know your own self better. You will discover your ability and your interest areas better. If the companies and academic requirements is saying that you have to do project for 3 months, don't do for 3 months. Please do it for 6 months. You start developing a sense of yourself if you spend on certain area for 6 months, and that is the reality. You can look at your own past career. You are all young adults. You have spent 21. You have wisdom of 21, 22 years of experience. With that, you should be able to discover yourself. One of the key things for success in the marketplace, as well as in industry, as well as in your own teams, is that if you are self-aware, that means you know what you want to do. You are likely to be much more successful. You have a much better personality to succeed in the market. So please do that. This is a good time that you started to discover yourself. This is a good time for you to know which are the ones that you'll really be interested. And then it is a good time that you start looking at what market. See, if you say I want to do in the Java developer, it may not make sense. But market is asking for full stack developer. Develop that skill, and then out of that 80% might be of interest, 20% may not be of interest, and that is how typically every role is. Whatever role you take, whatever subjects you take, right? In your semester, you will like only 4 subjects out of 6 subjects. It's a reality. Face it. In the job also, you'll see that there will be 20% of work that you will not like at all in any time. Whether you become CEO also, you'll not like, right? So 20% will have to be done for the sake of doing, but 80% of the things you will do and you will enjoy that. That is the kind of role, or that is the kind of understanding you need to develop before you get into a role of job, right? Did I answer your question? Okay, next one is cyber security industry affected amid this pandemic. Can web developer be a bug hunter? Respond reporting bugs ethically to company, cause we are seeing a lot of cyber crimes nowadays. Absolutely. See, Facebook pays you $5,000 if you find that problem in their code. You can definitely be that. But see, there are two reasons why you should do that. If you are saying that is your career, fine. But if you're saying that I want to develop fantastic skills in that area, and if I'm able to hunt this, and because of that hunting, I'm able to develop seriously good skills, then you should do it right now. I don't object to that at all. The next question is, what is the next network security engineer's role? See, please understand, I think the previous guy has asked the same question. Is it same person or somebody else? Chinmay Nayak has asked this question, and who is the other person who has asked them? Is that you only, Chinmay, who has asked the same question, cyber security and all? Can I pull it down? Both other one is Harish Reddy. Okay. So what I'm saying is the data will go from one network to another network. Data will travel on the wireless or on the wired lines in the future. Now there are enough rogue developers who are there who want to tap or who want to trap this data while it is traveling. So they are also very, very good engineers. Please understand, these rogue developers are much better engineers. Reality is they are very good engineers. So you have to crack and you have to keep yourself unaffected by these rogue developers who are fantastic engineers. So if you want to do that, your ability has to be equally good or better than that, right? And you are ethical also. So the idea of network is because everything in the world, everything will be connected, correct? Your IoTs will connect everything in your house. Your IoTs will connect every machine in the house. Your IoTs will connect every device in the world. Your phones are already connected. Your personal data is in the phones. Your machines can operate, and if somebody traps them and make them operate wrongly, the entire production can go wrong. So there's so much of data and processing that happens over the wire and over the network. And because of that, network security has become very, very vital. If you can develop a very good skill and a good sense of how to keep protecting, how to monitor these networks, and how do you avoid these threats, and then keep catching these threats early, you will become, that's a fantastic career to get. It is as long as connected world is there, this network engineer will survive. No amount of automation can find this guys, this rogue developers. So all you need to look at is that whether the rogue developers continue to exist or not. As long as those exist, you become superhero. You will exist. So supervillain has to be there for superhero to be existing. So you become superhero, you're a network engineer. Did I answer your question? Can AI would replace a web developer? Yes, AI will replace those parts of web development which are primarily repeatable. So the repeatability in web development is like framing a template, framing framing. So basically, if you say that I need this kind of widget, the getting that widget into that place and putting that code within that widget, the AI can do. AI cannot organize, think, and give what we believe is a customer experience kind of experience. So that web developer has to still do. So some parts of, if it is making your life easier within the web development, I think you should be happy. Don't worry about that. Okay, guys. Any other questions? I think we are past our time, so I'm sure testing product can also become AI would take over testers. Oh, definitely AI. Yeah. See, I'm telling you, that's why I'm saying testers as a pure tester will not survive. Please forget testing jobs. If you are looking at testing, just forget it. You would need to look yourself as developer, and it is good that if you bring all the developers are expected to develop some quality sense. You will have some survey. If you are a tester, you will have some more time, like another 10-15 years will be there, primarily because you need to be what we call as unit tester and specialist, what we call automation tester. You will start to test function. I think that role will not survive long. Okay, anything else, guys? Smita is inviting me to schedule Zoom, so I don't.
Wonderful, Srinivas. Thank you so much for taking time and being here. We really appreciate your time, and especially the Q&A session. I think it added a lot of value to everybody. We really appreciate this. And
Thank
students,
you.
thank you for your participation. And all of you have a wonderful
Thanks,
weekend.
guys. Bye. Stay safe.